Hey guys, welcome back to Pre-Calc and Trig. Today we are talking about solving equations graphically, numerically, and algebraically. So we're going to do this by solving the quadratic formula, graphing, factoring, pulling out the square root. So let's go ahead and get started. So solving equations graphically. This, my number one thing, first to start off with, Desmos.com, which is a resource in your Google Classroom, Desmos.com/calculator, right here. This is going to be your best friend this entire chapter or this entire lesson. Use this because over half of your questions on today's assignment is to solve graphing. And here, bam, you have a graphing calculator in your computer. So Desmos.com/graphing is going to be your best friend because you need to solve these by graphing. Some of them. Some of them we're going to do algebraically, and some of them we're going to do numerically, like it just said. So one way to solve an equation is to graph it. So whenever we graph an equation, so in this case, this equation is y equals 2x minus 5. So one way to solve an equation graphically is to find all of its x-intercepts, okay? X-intercept is where your graph crosses the x-axis, and this gives you your solutions, which is known as roots, which is known as your x-intercepts. These are graphical techniques that can be used to find your x-intercepts. So if we were to put into Desmos, in this case they use a graphing calculator, y equals 2x minus 5. So this is a line. Start at -5, up to over 1, up to over 1. We graph it, and then if you look, this line crosses your x-axis right here at this point. Okay, it's between 2 and 3, so it's 2.5. So this coordinate point is 2.5, 0. Okay, so that tells us that that is an x-intercept. Therefore, x equals 2.5, which is your x value. That's your solution to this equation. Okay, that's all you got to do. And so let's do another example, and let's talk about this chapter. Basically what we're going to be doing is talking about quadratics. So we're going to solve these factoring, extracting the square roots, and using the quadratic formula. Those are the 3 of the 4. We're not going to do completing the square. So a quadratic equation x is one that can be written in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, where a, b, and c are real numbers and a cannot equal 0. Okay, so being able to identify a, b, and c is very important whenever we do our quadratic formula, which is in this chapter. So our a is the coefficient for the term x squared. So whatever number's in front of x squared, whatever that coefficient is, that's our a value. Our b is the coefficient for our x term, and then our c is the constant. Okay, so being able to identify wherever x squared is, because it may not be perfectly lined up like this, term in front of x squared, the coefficient is a, coefficient for x is b, and then our constant is c. And then, so yeah, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to first start by graphing and then factoring. So let's talk about graphing first. With Desmos, this is a screenshot just from Desmos. So whenever you put in desmos.com/graphing or go to your resources, a graph is gonna pop up, and then on the left side there's gonna be a little enter place. So we're gonna enter in our equation 2x squared minus 3x minus 2. Okay, we're not gonna type in equals 0, because all that is if your y value is 0, that would be your x-intercept. So we're just gonna find this by plugging in this function into our space bar. So then we hit enter, and then your graph pops up. Okay, so you have little gray dots here. Here's your parabola. If we type those, if we tap them, these little boxes will come up, and look, those are your solutions, okay? If you see here, like here's your y-intercept of your parabola, here's your vertex, your minimum, okay? It gives you a lot in Desmos, and so if we tap these solution boxes will pop up right here. So that tells us your solution is -0.5 and 2. So the solution to this equation are -0.5 and 2. And that's all you have to do. Desmos just does it for you. You just graph it, put it in there, and then your solutions wherever it crosses the x-axis, which in this case are those 2 points. Okay, so if we solve algebraically, in this case, we have to use factoring. Okay, same problem, but we're going to try factoring. If you are kind of rusty at factoring, make sure you practice that. We're going to do another example of factoring. If we need to do more examples or work together with factoring, let me know. Okay, so in this case, we can use factoring to find the exact values. So we have 2x squared minus 3x minus 2 still. So we need to break these up into their factors. So there are two methods to do this. I like to do the slide and divide method. I'm going to come over here and just work out this one. The 2x squared minus 3x minus 2. So basically equals 0. But whenever we factor, we don't really need that equals 0. So the slide and divide method is how I teach it. So we're going to take this first, a, and we're going to multiply it times c. So we have x squared minus 3x, and then 2 times negative 2 is a negative 4. And so now we have a beautiful trinomial with a coefficient of 1. Our leading coefficient is 1, and that makes our lives easier. And so we draw an x. Our negative 4, our c, goes at the top, and your middle term goes at the bottom. So this kind of helps to keep us in track of, we need two numbers that multiply to get negative 4, but add to get negative 3. Okay, well, I know that is a negative 4 and a positive 1. Negative 4 times 1 is a negative 4. Negative 4 plus 1 is a negative 3. So these two sides are the x minus 4 and x plus 1 since it's a positive. Okay, so we slid. Now we have to divide. Just kidding, that rhymes, but it is not a word. So if we multiply by 2, we have to divide by 2. So we divide by 2. So x, and then we have the negative 4 over 2. That simplifies to be negative 2. So this is x minus 2. And then here we have x plus 1/2. So 1/2 does not simplify. So I'm going to take this 2 and put it out front. So we have 2x plus 1. Okay, and that equals 0. And that's exactly what we got. 2x plus 1 here, x minus 2 here. So once you have your factors, you set each factor equal to 0. This factor equal to 0. So that goes there, that goes there. We're breaking them up to say equal 0. And then we just solve. So minus 1, and then so that would be 2x equals negative 1. Divide by 2, we get the negative 1/2. Here we just add 2. Okay, and that's what you do. So I think I have another example of factoring. Yeah, okay. So again, slide and divide. We are going to take this 2. We are going to multiply. So we have x squared plus 5x. 2 times negative 3 is a negative 6 equals 0. Okay, now leading coefficient is 1. So I'm going to draw my x. Negative 6 goes at the top. 5 goes at the bottom. Okay, so the two things that multiply to get a negative 6 and add to get a 5 would be a negative or positive 6 and a negative 1. Okay, so we have x plus 6 and an x minus 1. So we slid, now we divide. I can't help myself now. So we multiply by 2, now we divide by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3, so that's x plus 3. That does not simplify, so our denominator moves up to be the coefficient in front of our x, so we get 2x minus 1 equals 0. So now we have our factors. So we're going to say x plus 3 equals 0. Well, obviously we subtract 3, so x equals negative 3. That one's super easy if it's just there's nothing in front because it is opposite. And then if we have 2x minus 1 equals 0, add 1. 2x equals 1, divide by 2. X equals 1/2. So those are the two solutions. So like if you write it in Math Excel, you'll say negative 3, 1/2. You can always check it by your graph too, but you need to be able to factor so that way you know what you're doing. Okay, now let's talking about extracting the square root. So think about extracting is like pulling out, like taking away. So we are going to extract, we want to break up this square. Like if we multiplied that out, we would solve a square. But what we want to do is isolate this by itself. We want to undo the square. So to undo the square, we take the square root of both sides. The square root of a square is whatever in the center. So if we take the square root of both sides, so the square root of 2x minus 1 squared, these cancel. So we're just left with 2x minus 1. And then the square root of 9 is a plus or minus 3. Make sure you don't forget that plus or minus 3 because this could be a positive or a negative, right? Well, 3 squared gets us 9, and then negative 3 squared also gets us 9. That's what I meant. So now we can break it up from here. So we can say 2x plus 1 equals a positive 3. And then, I'm going to come over here for this one. 2x minus 1 equals a negative 3. Okay, I don't think they did a very good job at what to do after that. So we break it up. That's where we got the next part. So we subtract 1. So we have 2x equals 3 minus 1 is 2. Divide by 2, x equals 1. Right? Why did I... Oh, that's a 4. Wow. Plus 1. That's a minus 1. I wrote down the problem wrong. Ha, 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 ha. Okay, so 2x minus 1 equals a positive 3 and a negative 3. Add 1. There we go. 2x is equal to 4. Divide by 2. X equals 2. Okay, then over here we add 1. 2x negative 3 plus 1 would be a negative 2. Divide by 2. X equals a negative 1. So x equals negative 1, x equals 2, and that's what they got. So that's how you do it algebraically. Basically, you want to break up this squared. So that way you don't have to like write it out twice and solve for x and then factor or do the thing. So let's do another one. So solve the following by extracting the square root. So we want to get this on the side by itself. Okay, what we have over there is also the 2. So we're going to divide by 2. So we have x minus 5 is equal to 17 over 2 squared. Okay, now we take the square root of both sides. So we have x minus 5 is equal to the square root of 17 over 2 plus or minus 17 over 2. Okay, and then we add 5, and so we have x equals plus or minus the square root of 17 over 2, and then plus 5. So from here, that's not going to be your final answer. What you need to do is plug it into your calculator, and you're going to say, in your calculator, you're going to put the square root of 17 divided by 2, and then plus 5. That's one solution. And then a negative 17 over 2 plus 5. Okay, and then I should have done that in my calculator and I didn't, but that's what you're gonna do. Oh, here, I have a calculator right here. Okay, so second, square root of 17 divided by 2 plus 5 would be 7 point, I'm gonna say round to the nearest tenth, and then negative square root of 17 over 2 plus 5, and we get comma 2.1. Okay, so those are your 2 solutions. And again, you can always check it by graphing. Okay, so now quadratic formula. So solutions of a quadratic formula, we have ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And so we have our quadratic formula. Whenever you see this, I always tell my students to write what a equals, what b equals, and what c equals. Label it so then you can just plug it in. Okay, so if we have this equation or this problem, so we are going to solve 3x squared minus 6x is equal to 5. So this is not in ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. We have to have equals 0 in order to solve. It does not have equals 0. Right here we have equals 5. So what we need to do is we need to subtract 5 to both sides. So now we're left with 3x squared minus 6x minus 5 equals 0. So now we're good. Again, I like to label what a equals. A equals 3, b equals negative 6, and c equals negative 5. So now we have our equation, and we can just plug in our numbers. So b, a negative b, if we have a negative 6, it's now a positive 6. And then plus or minus negative 6 squared minus 4 times a, which is 3, times c, which is negative 5, all over 2 times whatever a is. So if we plug this right here in your calculator in first, you get a square root of 96. Square root of 96 is not a perfect, lovely number. So what we do from this point right here, we're going to take this plus or minus and break it up, just kind of like what we did on the last example. So we're going to say 6 plus the square root of 96 divided by 6, and then 6 minus the square root of 96 divided by 6. Plug both of those into your calculator, and then you're going to get 2.63 and negative 0.63. Okay, and so that is how you solve by the quadratic formula. I think I have another example for us to do with that. Okay, so we have x times x plus 5 is equal to 12. This obviously clearly is not in standard form, so we need to do some manipulating. So I'm going to first distribute. So we have x squared plus 5x is equal to 12. Okay, we need to move our 12, so subtract 12. So we get, I'm gonna run out of room, I can already tell, so I'm gonna come up here. X squared plus 5x minus 12 is equal to 0. Okay, I'm gonna erase this so that way I have room. So our A is 1, our B is 5, and our C is negative 12. So we're gonna put those into our quadratic formula. So negative B, so negative 5, plus or minus the square root of 5 squared minus 4 times A, which is 1, times C, which is negative 12. All of that is over 2 times A, which is 1. So that's what x equals. So first what I put in my calculator is this square root part. Okay, so I take the square root of 5 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 12, and I get the square root of 73. So I get negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 73 divided by 2 times 1, which is 2. So now I'm going to break this up to say negative 5 plus the square root of 73 over 2, and then negative 5 minus the square root of 73 over 2. So and we're going to type that into our calculator just like that. Negative 5 plus the square root of 73 divided by 2, and we get 1.77. And then here, if we get negative 5 minus the square root of 73 divided by 2, we get negative 6.77. Okay, and those are the two answers. And so if you are struggling with plugging it in, making mistakes somewhere, reach out to me and we can get that figured out where a mistake is being made. Okay, oh my goodness, we have another one. This is a long lesson, I'm sorry guys. So solve the equation, the absolute value of 2x minus 1 is equal to 6. So your graph, this right here is just talking about the hows and the whys and the fun facts and everything. I'm going to teach you like what to do. So we're looking for finding the intersections of the absolute value of 2x minus 1 is equal to 6. So if we graph this, which I forgot to put the graph in here, we could see that we're looking for the two intersections of these points. So, but how you find it is anything, remember, if you take the absolute value of anything, it's a positive number. So this inside right here can equal a positive 6, but this inside right here can also equal a negative 6. So we can have 2x minus 1 equals positive 6, or 2x minus 1 equals negative 6. And then we just solve. Add 1, so 6 plus 1 is 7, and then divide by 2, we get 7 over 2, or 3.5. Or here we add 1, negative 6 plus 1 is a negative 5, divided by 2 is negative 5 over 2. And so your two solutions, or your intersections between y equals 6 and then that absolute value graph would be at 3.5 and negative 2.5. Okay, now we're done. 19 total questions, okay? You guys got it. Easy peasy. Let me know if you have any questions. Bye.